goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-hosts and filmmakers, John and Elaine Woolscroft.
I want to be Brian Coddington this week.
Well, you can't. You have to be John Woolscroft.
You don't have a Brian Coddington mask to wear.
That you know of.
I mean, you could shave your head and get some glasses and, pack on about, 100 pounds, and then you might be able to pass as me, but... Yeah.
But I'll never have that flair.
No, you won't. So we're on episode 57, and we got kind of a mixed bag episode for this one.
Yeah, we got a new thing. We each are going to tell you some cool shit.
Well, we got a mixed bag of news, and then we've got our main topic. We're going to be joined later by a reviewer who we mentioned previously, Jordan Hale. He's going to be coming on the show and talking with us a little bit about, his opinions of some of the movies we've talked about, and then also just a very good discussion on the rise and I've been saying fall of comic book movies. Yes. So that'll be interesting after the break. But yeah, Elaine, what do we got for mixed bag of news?
Cool. So I'm going to start with Disney nerds.
Okay.
So the big hubbub today was that the announcement for the Disney Fan Expo event. It's called D23 Expo. Now, this is for the Disney official fan club for the Walt Disney Company.
Is there still a Disney fan club?
Well, this was founded in 2009, so this isn't that old. The organization really is just known for this event called the D23 Expo, and that's because D for Disney, 1923, for the year that Walt Disney started the corporation. So they announced some stuff.
Illuminati-esque here.
This is kind of like what Star Wars...
You got, like, weird hand motions you have to do.
I mean, you have to do certain things to be in the club, but we can't say what they are. Now, this is sort of like Star Wars Celebrations, where we saw the Last Jedi trailer, before anybody. So there'll be like sneak peeks of different things. And since it takes place next month, they announced a little bit of the roster that's happening. So there's going to be some never before seen footage from the upcoming Pixar film, Coco. And they're also going to be showing Ralph Breaks the Internet, Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Oh,
so
cool.
A lot of people are going to probably be super excited about that. The first one was really well received.
Love the first one.
Yeah, I mean, really well critically acclaimed, etc. So some of the voice talent's going to be there in person, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
They are also amassing a number of the animators and voices that have done princesses. That's what the idea of it is called. It's called The Power of the Princess. And, the voice of Tiana is going to be there, the voice of Moana, the voice of Mulan, the voice of Ariel. So I thought it was cool. They kind of did like an intergenerational sort of thing, Ariel came out a really long time ago. and then, of course, Moana is their most recent. So that's pretty cool.
It's basically a Disney nerdgasm.
It is a nerdgasm. And then the last thing is there's going to be a behind-the-scenes footage from the newest Frozen short, which they did announce they're doing a Frozen 2. It won't be out until 2019.
Well, Elaine, interestingly enough, aren't they making one of the Star Wars films that come out in May instead of December?
Yes, interestingly so.
Seriously?
Yes, that's true. No, because so obviously, and this will lead into John's story, the Han Solo film is next year.
Yeah.
So that's next December. And then, like John said, 2019, they're going to be releasing episode 9 in May, like the original ones were, because Frozen 2 is coming out in like Christmas time. So I think they're going to have it come November again. That's how the original one was released. And that's the reason, because they don't want to like split their bets. They don't want to have two big juggernauts out at the same time.
They want to compete against themselves.
Exactly. I mean, and they shouldn't, because I mean, they're both going to have huge box office returns, and why mess with that? Because I don't know, I'm really excited for Frozen 2, but the new short's called Olaf's Frozen Adventure, and the whole cast is back. And
buy toys.
And so shut up. Let me have things. But they'll all be back, but we'll be seeing behind the scenes, footage from there. there.
Frozen. Oh, here's the thing. My mind goes automatically to the gutter. I just think Olaf ends up at like the red light district.
Oh my god! It's not that kind of
Get someone
adventure.
to fondle his snowballs.
I want to give you a warm hug.
Ew. Anyway, speaking of Star Wars,
Carrot comes off.
I just threw up.
Oh god!
Just threw up. All right, you depraved human being. What do we have from Star Wars land?
Oh, well, guess what? I'm going to crap on Star Wars a little bit.
Big
Aw,
shocker!
I'm so
Big shocker
surprised.
there. Crapping on Star Wars.
Hey, you know what? I'm like that dad who was really proud of his kid, and then he started like getting into drugs and stealing things. He doesn't have anything good to say anymore. It's like, it's only because I love him.
His name's
weird.
Denny.
Yeah, Danny.
That was weird.
Well, Thaddy Newton, who is one of the, or Thandie Newton, excuse me, is one of the actresses in the Han Solo spin-off,
Yeah.
A prequel.
soft reboot, prequel, sequel.
Spin-off.
Yeah, spin-off. Han Solo film says, this one's really different. Bullshit. I'm just calling it right now.
Oh my god, John.
Oh god, this one's really different bullshit.
Yeah. At first, I thought, oh, maybe she just hasn't done any movies on green screen. And she thinks that's because she said it's different from anything I've ever worked on before. But she was in Chronicles of Riddick and movies like that. So I know that she's probably done a lot of special effects, heavy films. But she says it's fantastic. I'm loving it. It's different from anything else I've done or am doing. I can't tell you why. It's just different. Okay. It's just really different.
So it's the typical, actor studio line that you get from actors when they're doing any type of publicity.
Dude, I want it to be real though. I mean, like, I don't know what they're doing. I know there's a lot of debate with like the extended universe and all that bullshit, but I mean, they have made some things from the novels canon.
That's true.
Including Grand Admiral Thrawn and Rebels. So, I mean, it is my fondest hope that the A.C. Crispin trilogy, and this is like Dork Forest, y'all. I'm real sorry.
I don't know what the
there
fuck
was
it
a series of 3 books that told the origin of Han Solo. Oh, I have been told this story already. It was fan-fucking-tastic. Yeah. If they did that story, or even elements of it.
Didn't he like rescue Chewbacca?
Well,
like
yeah, he did. He was a child beggar and a smuggler, and and he ends up on this planet where he's mining this spice that has to, and spice is like kind of like drugs in this universe, and it has to be
very
mined.
Similar to Dune.
It has to be mined in total darkness, and like I mean, just the elements of how that could be brought to the screen of like having to. To work with this planet that's like jungle in nature, and there's these like weird like cat beast people. I mean, it could be amazing. I mean, it could be horrible, but it could be amazing. I don't know what they're taking. If anything, but
honestly about this is that they're going to take maybe a couple elements from that.
I would love that,
and then Boba Fett the shit out of it because people love Boba Fett.
I hope not. I didn't think about that. I hope not.
They're going to throw Jabba in there. They're going to throw Boba Fett in there. They're going to throw all that other crap in there because that's what people are used to.
Well, do we know how much of the story it's going to be?
No, the problem with this is that they're keeping as tight-lipped as possible, just with anything that they produce with Star Wars, and so it's like, oh, it's just really, really different, but I can't tell you how.
It's weird because like with Force Awakens, I was like, oh, take my money, and then with Rogue, One, I was like, oh, take my money, and then I regretted it. But with I don't know, with like maybe it's because I didn't like Rogue One, but with the Han Solo movie, I'm like a little like afraid, like I've been hurt. You know what I mean?
Well, it's what they don't realize. Is that
Star Wars is an abusive boyfriend?
Kind of.
Is that these fans have not stated in any way they want anything different. They love The Force Awakens, and it was the same movie they've already seen. And what did most people love about Rogue One was, oh, there's AT-ATs in it. Oh, there was X-Wings. There was Death Star. Tarkin was in it. Yay!
No one liked Tarkin in it.
What my hope is that this next installment, for Han Solo is more than just member berries.
I think that's exactly what it's going to be.
It's all going to be member berries. I'm honestly, I hate to be pessimistic about this, but the spin-offs, Rogue One was okay. I actually didn't mind it completely because I knew what to expect. I was expecting pretty much what I saw. Although what I found funny with Rogue One, I think I mentioned this on the review, was just how they tried to be non-Star Wars about it. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't have the themes.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
there was no crawl.
It was they call it a Star Wars story, but it's not a Star Wars movie. My hope is that Han Solo, the Solo Project will be a Star Wars movie.
I hope so. I really do.
And I really want to see Last Jedi, and you have to take me because we're married, John.
Well, we also have a podcast to do, but
I don't care. I'm just kidding.
I'm interested. I want to see what they do.
I'm curious,
but the thing is, I don't understand why you make a origin story of a guy who already had an origin story. He was already super young. It's called New Hope. I don't know how. What are they going to? Is it going to be 5? But especially when he's also a character that was kind of a scumbag, and then we kind of are introduced to him when he kind of has a change in his character. So he's going to be a really piece of crap, and there's going to be no tension because it's a prequel, and we already know what happens to him.
Let me tell you how it's going to begin. He's going to get stabbed by Kylo Ren and fall down the shaft. And as he's falling down the shaft, he's going to remember all of his life. And there you go. That's
how did I get here?
He'll just be like, it'll be like a super slow motion.
I hope not.
That'd be amazing, though.
The wavy lines will come across the screen.
Yeah. I know what you're thinking.
I know what you're thinking. How did I get here? Well, let me tell you something.
It all started when I was a little boy.
Oh, God.
I've never actually wanted to hit you both at the same time before.
But
yet here we are.
Yeah, okay, you can't sit there and tell me that isn't a possibility.
I can and I will. No, I'm just kidding. They could really fuck it up. I don't know. I'm really sad. Brian, what's your story? I'm depressed.
Oh, just really quick. I am excited how Harrison Ford's trying to kill off all of his iconic characters. Like, I guarantee, I know nothing in the story. He's going to die in the new Blade Runner. I guarantee.
Well, and then Indiana Jones.
Yeah. And he signed on to Indiana Jones. I guarantee he's going to say, go so you can kill me.
I don't want to talk about Harrison Ford anymore.
He's going to be Jack Ryan again. He's going to be like, only if I die.
Brian.
Okay, so my little bit of news is I found this out today. So Hellboy's getting a reboot. It's going to start filming in the fall, and it's not going to have, Ron Perlman in it. Yeah. So this is according to Screen Rant. David Harbour of Stranger Things fame has been picked to be the new Hellboy.
I think that's a good choice.
I like that.
I like it, but at the same time, I kind of, I love Guillermo del Toro's 2 films. Even Golden Army, I loved it. But yeah, so del Toro is not involved with this at all. Neither is Ron Perlman.
So they're just rebooting the shit out of it?
It's a complete reboot. It's going to be called Hellboy: Rise of the Blood Queen. It's going to start filming in the fall, and here's the funny thing. So apparently, Patton Oswalt had a sit down. He basically managed a sit down between David Harbour and Ron Perlman to go over Hellboy.
Wow, really?
Yes, this happened at a diner.
That seems cool.
Because a lot of fans were like me, going well, we've been promised Hellboy 3 for 10 years?
Well, didn't Ron Perlman refuse to do it?
No, he wanted to do it.
Oh, I thought
Him and Guillermo del Toro both wanted to do it.
They couldn't get the money,
but they just couldn't get the money because a lot of people said that Golden Army was kind of a flop.
Yeah, the second one didn't make a ton of money.
It didn't make a ton of money, but honestly, Hellboy is one of those superhero franchise. It's it's darker. Yeah. It's almost like The Crow, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as the actor tete-a-tete, I mean, wouldn't you want the previous guy? I mean, wouldn't you want to at least talk to him,
especially if you know that you've got 2 movies in which you've basically set up a fantastic third. Like the first 2 Hellboy movies basically set up that you're going to have the end of the world happen, and Hellboy is going to be responsible for it. And that now with the second movie, he's got kids involved. So it's like, I wanted that end. I wanted that payoff, and totally. We're never going to get it. But it's going to be directed by Neil Marshall, who is famous for The Descent, which I've seen, and Game of Thrones. So, hey, there's that. But it's kind of been a mixed reaction to it. It's some fans are kind of like me, and they're just like, that's great, but...
Well, everybody said, nobody will ever be able to be the Joker except Jack Nicholson.
It's very true.
And then we got Heath Ledger, and, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but, there is somebody else out there that can play J. Jonah Jameson. It's not just J.K. Simmons. Eventually there will be another, and we'll say he did good too. I know that
That's random that you picked that specific character. I thought you were going to say, like, there's going to be a new Selena Kyle and it's going to be amazing. Like, it was very strange you picked J. Jonah Jameson.
The Amazing Spider-Man franchise completely ignored him because and everybody said, well, it's because you can't touch what J.K. Simmons did, and everyone said that about Jack Nicholson's Joker.
It's true.
Yeah.
So
I will say that J.K. Simmons did do a fantastic.
Oh yeah.
You know, like he
did.
literally was.
Parker, you're fired.
Parker, you're fired.
You call these photos of Spider-Man? Parker, get out here with us. All right, you're rehired.
I trust my barber.
So I guess that sets us up pretty beautifully for the episode. Do we want to take a break, and then when we're back, we'll be joined by Jordan, and we'll talk some comic book movies?
That's right.
Let's do it!
All right, well then, check out this cool message from the Epicast Network, dear listeners, and we will be back in just a few.
Hey guys, this is Marta from Marta on the Move. I hope you're enjoying this podcast. When you're done with this one, you should go check out mine on www.martaonthemove.com. On the Epicast Network, you can find me on Twitter at I Can't Find Marta. If you like interesting people and places in Pittsburgh, food and drink, travel advice, and general nerdery, check it out and keep it moving.
And we're back. That was a message from our friends over at the Epicast Network. Great shows over there. Check them out at epicastnetwork.com. And we're joined today for our main segment, which is going to be on the rise, and I guess you could say fall of comic book movies, depending on how... Both?
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. And we're joined today with a special guest. We mentioned him briefly a couple weeks ago when... Elaine, you were out in Florida, and that's noise from a laptop.
Is it? I'm sorry, I didn't even realize it was me. I was looking up noises or news stories. But yeah, no. So when all this flurry of activity happened on the Cinema Psychos page, I was in Florida.
Yeah,
I get like these texts.
Eating dolphin.
Yeah, mostly the face, just dolphin face. It's fine.
A mahi-mahi is dolphin.
Technically, but in the way that a wolf is a dog, John. But yeah, I was away and came like all these texts and messages, and came back to the Psychos show page, and we had this exciting new thing happen. You know? I left for a week, and this is what happens.
Well, I mean, it was refreshing. So we mentioned about our guest Jordan Hale, and
hi, Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
Hello.
Hello.
We're kind of just leaving him in the wings there, kind of talking about him like he's not on the line
No,
with us.
he's here.
He's here.
He's joined us over Skype.
Live.
But yeah, we basically got our first real negative review, and it was refreshing because we've talked about how we want reviews, we want to see how we're doing, and just kind of gauging how the podcast is with you guys, the audience, and we got a response, and it was refreshing because we clearly disagreed on some stuff, but it was new. It was
nuanced too. It had he actually pointed some stuff out, not just you guys suck, which is valid, I suppose. But it's like, why do we suck? But so
well, that's what's nice about the arts, and film in particular. You can have constructive discourse because people are going to differ on opinion. So
right. So Jordan, do you just want to kind of give us a quick rundown of who you are, how you found the show, and just kind of what your views were for members of the audience who maybe hadn't tuned into those episodes?
Yeah, well, I'm a film lover just like you guys, so I was looking for a new podcast to listen to, and I like to listen to reviews of movies I've already seen, because I think listening to a review of a movie you haven't seen yet kind of ruins it.
Right.
So I look up reviews of my favorite movies and see what other people think about them, and I was looking up like No Country for Old Men, which you guys discussed on the classics of the 2000s, and then I looked up like Blair Witch and Boyhood, and then I heard some of the things you guys said, and I was just like, what? I could not believe it. The gimmick and stuff like that. Oh. You guys like to use that word a lot.
Yeah, I think that's mostly me.
That was mostly John. I mean, I brought it up regarding Blair Witch, but I'm just curious. So, I mean, it was listed on the review, but what were your opinions regarding Blair Witch that you disagree with? Like, why do you love it? You know,
The original 1999.
yes,
Well, it's really scary for one. But even if you don't think it's scary, it was a new way to tell a story. It was really immersive. That's one thing about found footage. It's really immersive, and you can't really tell that kind of story, you know, with a narrative, or it's been done before and it wasn't very good, you know.
yeah. I mean, I definitely could see that. I mean, when I mentioned gimmick, I basically said it was innovative in its marketing. In films of that time, you know, and I mentioned this on the show, they didn't really explore the internet the way that Blair Witch did, and that's at least for me what I viewed was innovative about it. I mean, I'm a big horror fan, so I mean, I kind of, you know, I mean, I'm assuming you were too, since you were a fan of that movie. But I mean, I'm a fan of 1980s slasher movies and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys kept saying that you knew it was. Did you know it was fake when you saw it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I
well.
did too, and I still loved it. And you didn't like it, right?
For me, I didn't like. I think John, you liked it.
Especially when I first saw it. Certainly wasn't one of my favorite films of all time, but I did buy in. You know, buy in the sense that I was willing to go along for the ride. I mean, I had seen the actors and stuff on Leno, so I knew it wasn't, you know, in any way like just some kind of snuff film. But I found it entertaining. On repeated viewings, the novelty kind of started to wear thin a little bit, but I still enjoyed it. I would check it out if it was on cable, which it very rarely is to this day. But so yeah, I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Jordan. I liked the film a lot. I saw it as an adult, so I was way beyond, you know, all of the flurry of promotion around the film, which I agree with Brian. I also thought was genius. But I actually think it's interesting as well as like part social experiment, because in the years since, you know, we found out that the female actress like actually slept with a knife under her pillow because she didn't know what the hell was going on when she filmed this movie with all these dudes in the woods. And so I think it's a piece that has transcended what a film can actually be, because I know we talk about story and we talk about narrative, we talk about character arc, but I think this is something entirely different as a film, and I think that that's okay. I mean, and I saw it at like 25 and I thought it was scary.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing when people point out a movie has no like 3-act structure or just a new way of telling a story. They point out it has no 3 acts or like traditional film narratives, and I think that's like one of the strengths of the movie.
Well, one of the things I had felt, and I just want to like briefly discuss with you, with the Boyhood situation, I felt that film very much treated itself like a traditional film. Now with Richard Linklater, you know, he takes some of that tradition out the window right out the bat, but it did feel like your typical story it had something that they put in that to try to make it unique, in the fact that they filmed that over 11 years. I had felt that if they had taken that out of the equation, I felt that the film would have been very much average in its approach. So I just curious your take on that. If they had filmed that with different actors over different periods of time, how do you feel that Boyhood would have been as impactful?
Well, no, but that's the thing. You can't take it away. It's very much ingrained in the movie. There's a lot of movies that are filmed differently, and if you take it away, it wouldn't be anything special. You seen Memento?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you just play that movie like a straightforward, this guy's hunting for his wife's killer with a twist at the end, do you think that would be a good movie?
I've seen it. It's actually not. There's a way you can hack the DVD. Like back in the day when like DVD menus were ridiculously elaborate, there was a way you could like hack it, quote unquote. You could put a code in, like legit, like old school video game style, and it would play the movie forwards, quote unquote. And it was very bizarre. It's so funny how you get used to Memento the way that it's normally played. When it's played in the order that it's supposed to be, it's so incredible because literally something happens that is important, but then it goes to the next scene and he should know what's happened, and you're like, no, you're an idiot. Like you just kind of scream at Guy Pearce the whole time because it's so absurd, played forwards, quote unquote. So I mean,
maybe that was a bad example.
No, I mean, I think it's a great example
No,
because
yeah.
I mean, most people are going to watch it the way that it's intended, and I think you have a really good point. Like, I watched it forwards just for fun, just to see, and I would definitely not recommend it because it makes the movie ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, I think movies like that, especially like something like Memento, the narrative is well done, even though it's atypical.
Yeah. You know what movie is a gimmick? Woody Harrelson just filmed this movie that was like live. He filmed the whole movie live.
Oh, weird.
And they're going to play it in some theater. I don't remember the name of it, but you probably look it up on IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to check.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
I mean, there are definitely
Like
some.
that.
Oh, go ahead.
That would be a gimmick.
And then did Woody
I don't
Harrelson
think that-
direct or?
Yeah, he may have directed it.
Okay.
I don't think it's been released yet.
Okay. Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah, that does sound like kind of something that is more about the process than the product, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, perhaps from time to time, like, because Hollywood, with the exception of, some mainstream directors like David Lynch, perhaps we are a little harder on films that, try to stay into that whole universe because we expect them to follow all the narrative structures of big studio films. And, from time to time, we possibly are a little rough, maybe put the screws a little too hard on things instead of looking possibly a little more abstractly on them. So, it was... nice getting your take on that and just, kind of looking at things a little bit differently.
Yeah, if you think about it, movies are just like, they're a way to compress time and space. That's what they do. They go from one scene to the next, taking out time. And that's pretty much what Boyhood does. It compresses 12 years into a 2 hour and 30-minute movie, so it's a different way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So, that's great. I definitely want to get to our main subject, which is the rise and fall of comic book movies.
You keep saying fall, Brian. They're
you
they're
say
long
fall,
from the
dude,
fall.
but I don't know, man.
Well, they
I
did
don't
fall
know.
a couple of times.
I don't know.
They did fall a couple of times, like in the mid '90s.
Batman and Robin.
All right, so wait, so Jordan, tell me, do you have particular fandoms that you love? Is there a comic book movie you love? I want to know where you're coming from on this because I'm used to these assholes' opinions. I already know these two.
Strictly comic book movies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the first two Xmen.
Yes.
Good movies.
I think those are pretty much the best of them.
Yes.
Then you have, obviously, the Dark Knight trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And the first two Spider-Man movies.
Yes.
Yes. Good picks.
I think those are way above all the new ones that are coming out.
It seems like there was two different time frames. I feel like especially like the Spider-Man that you mentioned, those two movies and the X-Men. I mean, those were long enough ago. I mean, good Lord, Spider-Man's been rebooted twice since. I think they were onto something with those films, and all you dudes, let me know what you think. I feel like those movies, they were trying to make a good movie, and I feel like the idea of comic book movie has now become something totally different that people are striving for, and that's like a totally different entity.
Elaine.
You're talking about the first two Spider-Man movies, right?
Yeah, first two Spider-Man, first two X-Men. I think those are really good examples. And two, I would say even The Dark Knight, because that's, usually very critically acclaimed and beloved by, nerds everywhere. But I think those movies, they still were movies at that time. And I feel like a comic book movie, like capital C-M, or CBM, wasn't something that people were really aspiring to.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I view that period basically, 1999, 2000s, up to maybe 2000, when Spider-Man 2 came out, like 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
Those movies kind of are like the main golden age, because it was right in that time where, they got past the goofiness of, say, like, Batman and Robin. And, you know, at the same time, they didn't go to the ridiculousness of, like, the first Hulk movie by Ang Lee, where that was quite literally a comic book on film, you know, with the frames and everything. And, you know, it wasn't yet at the point where it was very cerebral and trying to be realistic, like the Nolan films that came around. You know, like, that's just,
like I said,
trying to make a good movie that maybe has comic book elements to it.
Yeah, because I think that's what Nolan was really trying to do. So I think, like, now, I don't know, is there any comic book movie, Jordan, in particular, that's come out recently where you just think they utterly failed?
I haven't seen any that I just thought were terrible. Most of them I thought were pretty. In fact, I think all of them are pretty average. Some a little better than others. Like Suicide Squad was really average. I'm not really impressed with any of the Captain America movies.
Okay, interesting.
They all feel like they're leading into the next one instead of self-contained.
I agree.
Well, that I believe that's where we come to with the extended universes. Just to kind of go back to how we got here, I think as usual, for better or worse, we can blame George Lucas, because I'm gonna go past the whole serialized versions, you know, that you saw on like Saturday mornings, like our grandparents on like Saturday mornings and things like that, or Elaine, our dads, because they're super old.
Our dads were in their 70s for reference, everyone.
But it was after the success of Star Wars that the studio really thought that they could make a Superman movie, and Superman was kind of like, you know, the godfather of comic books that, you know, to turn into film. And so right after the success of Star Wars, they greenlit Superman, which was very risky back then because they made it into 2 films. I think they originally intended to make a very long movie, but they thought, we'll just break this into 2 chapters. That's why Zod gets encased in the first film, and then that doesn't pay off till the second movie. But even though that was very successful, both films, you really didn't see much in terms of big mania until 1989's Batman, and that, even more than Superman, just blew up. You couldn't go anywhere without Batman this, Batman that. And what should have really ushered in, you know, kind of a new era of superheroes, you had, you know, Superman, you had Batman, and we should be moving, you know, forward. But I think the problem was that the technology wasn't there. So you got a lot of classic Golden Age heroes like Shadow, Rocketeer, characters like that just didn't have the fan base behind them because they didn't have the money for really kind of like a, you know, Spider-Man or, you know, Xmen or these kind of characters that would require massive budgets and CGI that just wasn't available. Everything was, you know, hands-on back then. So Batman, you know, Superman and Batman kind of ushered in the first wave, but then, you know, if you guess you could look at Ninja Turtles as being successful as well, but then it kind of almost immediately died down. As quick as it had flamed on, it kind of died out a little bit.
Flame on. Now, Jordan, I know these guys love Batman. How do you feel about the 89 Batman?
I didn't really grow up with it.
Yeah,
I've seen it a few times, so
yeah,
it's fine to me.
Cool.
I'm more of a Spider-Man guy.
That's cool. I think with the Spider-Man films, I think you know, we always talk about this, you know, with the way that the story is approached is so important, and I think it does a really good job of having really good dialogue, which I think a lot of these movies sometimes just, you hear so many cliches, I think.
Which ones are you talking about?
With the Spider-Man movies, I think the writing's good, particularly the dialogue. And I think that that's something that's like lacking now.
Oh yeah. That's one of the, I hear a lot that one of the big criticisms of these Marvel movies is that none of their villains are very memorable or any good. Yeah. I kind of agree. Like the Green Goblin in Spider-Man 1 had so many good lines.
It's William Dafoe. I mean,
and too, a great performance.
Great actor.
You know, but he had a lot to work with, I think, and that like really helps. And then I don't think there's a single comic book movie that's as satisfying as Spider-Man 2, because like Peter's having a hard fucking time, and then everything turns around, and you're like, yes! It's so emotionally satisfying because they really played with tension and released that, like to let the audience like feel what he was feeling, and then feel like the release of everything getting better.
It's also just a really good character arc for all the characters in that movie. You know, with Spider-Man 2, you've got Peter Parker's, dealing with these powers, and it's like he's had them for a while, so he's used to them, but it's how do you balance that and, being a college student, having a love life, having a job, having family, and find that balance. And then you even got that with Dr. Octopus, where he's so singularly driven by this need to, create this new source of energy, and that it just consumes him and gets in the way of everything. And it becomes more personal, more, you really start to relate to him because, he loses his wife over it, and just gets so consumed for it, and then just kind of comes back from the precipice right at the end. So it's great character creation, in my opinion.
Do you guys, and I'll open up to all three of you, do you think that when these movies really started to take off again, and I mean, just to read off some of these movies that came out during the Dark Ages: Steel, The Phantom, Mystery Men, Batman Returns, which has a cult following, but many people don't care for. The Crow, which has a cult following, but most people ignored. Batman and Robin, Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. These all came out in between 89 Batman and what I would call the X-Men, or Blade, but we'll get
90s.
to that in a minute. Yeah. That these movies started to become a little bit more like approachable. As much as Superman and Batman are great, they're not characters that we can really relate to. And I think that characters like Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four...
You can't relate to Billy Zane as the Phantom?
I don't think Billy Zane could relate to Billy Zane as a Phantom. But, they became a little bit more approachable.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped the effect moving forward. Because I think Marvel does a better job at humanizing these characters a little bit more than DC does. And, I mean, I enjoy both Marvel and DC. So, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
I mean,
A little more, Brian.
I think a lot of these movies, people tried something, but it's sort of like good and bad to have a huge studio backing, because you have room to make mistakes, but you also have like resources and support, to really do things justice. I think the expectation now is that comic book movies are going to be made by fans and the people, involved in every aspect. I mean, I know that we rip on Zack Snyder a lot, but one thing I do appreciate is that he's a fan.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was something that was really paid attention to much before. It was just, I'm going to tackle this source material like anything else.
Well, I mean, you had that fandom for other genres. Like, the biggest example I can think of are Dracula, Frankenstein, classic Universal monster movies. Mm-hmm. A lot of the filmmakers that you get who made movies like, A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, those were the first wave of filmmakers that grew up with classic Universal monsters. And, they were fans of those classic Universal monster movies and tried to emulate that with their own films. And now you're seeing that happen with the superhero films. Movies like Zack Snyder, I'm assuming he was a fan of like the 89 Batman and Superman, from the 70s. And now he's trying to make movies that emulate that. So it's all cyclical. It depends on, the time period you're in.
But yeah, so now we move on to, interestingly enough, the movie that kind of kickstarted the new wave of superhero movies, which was Blade. A lot of people don't give Blade the credit that it deserves. I mean, is it corny? Is it weird? Is the acting a little stilted? Absolutely. But in the best ways possible. Absolutely. It's a hard R, which goes to show where they were feeling for comic book movies at that time. Like, what a big risk it was to make Deadpool and Logan an R. They didn't care then. With Blade, like, well, it's going to succeed or it's not on its own merits. And that became quite successful, which opened the door for X-Men, from there.
Remind me, Blade.
Wesley Snipes.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen Blade.
Well,
actually.
Oh, you're missing out.
Well,
am I? All right.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Good to know. But then, that does bring us to X-Men, which now has become quite a muddled franchise.
Oh God, it really has.
It's, the first two. I just remember seeing the second one like early in the theater, I like snuck in with some friends who worked at the theater. They were like, we're going to go see the movie because it came. Do you want to come? And I was like, yes, of course I do. I was in high school still. And a friend of mine was with me at the time. And she was like, hey, if you're not into this, we can go. And I was like, fuck off, I'm having fun. Like I could tell it wasn't her thing at all. And she was like, if you want to leave, we can leave. I'm like, cool, don't want to leave.
Jordan, did you at any point give up on the X-Men franchise? Because I've gone in waves because X-Men's probably my favorite, but I've just been points where I'm like, none of this makes any sense at this point.
I've never given up. I love the first two. Third one is is what it is. And then I've seen the First Class and was it Days of Future Past?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I can't really remember much about them. So
that kind of tells you something, doesn't it?
They're not quite that memorable.
Did you skip the X-Men Origins Wolverine?
Oh shoot, yeah, I didn't see any of those.
You saved yourself about an hour.
Wait. I did see one of them. I saw the one where. Oh shoot, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but
we spoil the shit out of all of our movies, so don't worry about that.
Okay, Wolverine gets shot in the head at the end. Which one's that?
That's X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay, yes, I saw that.
Yeah, and he
makes shows how memorable that was.
It really was. That was the first time Ryan Reynolds was Deadpool, and he had his mouth sewed shut, and oh god, so fucking terrible.
And those terrible CGI claws.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just said, you know what, it's a stupid movie. We're not going to throw much money into proper shading of CGI, that sort of thing.
I don't know why they would do that, though, because the fans come out and see these movies, so why not go ahead and try to make a good one?
Well, I mean, I think the problem ultimately is that it's the same thing that you have in the horror genre, too, that you have people who are dedicated. I mean, you and I, we're fans of that franchise, so, they're expecting that we would not really care, that they just throw Hugh Jackman up on a poster and, with Wolverine claws, and we're just like, yep, we're going to see it. I mean, honestly, by the time they get our ticket money, I mean, they don't really care. We can always walk out. I mean, I don't know about you. I've never demanded my ticket money back.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie that terrible in theaters.
I've come close.
You've come close?
Yeah. I think I saw Catwoman in theaters with Halle
Berry.
Yeah. But
why would you see Catwoman in theaters?
I don't know. But I think it comes down to with these movies is that, so much studio interference, because it's amazing that they do this, because they're tentpole movies. So they need to be successful. So we're going to put them up to this committee and what do we need? We need this and that and, and change this. And all these people that aren't creative insisting on all these adjustments and changes and rewrites and reshoots and re-edits to the point where the film just becomes a muddled mess, and what they even wanted to do in the first place is lost. And then we, the fans, have to sit back and say, why would they do that? This is something that we all wanted to see, and they're like, well, we wanted to make it successful. And they end up having the complete opposite effect. You see these films that actually succeed, like Logan, which is the most recent, Wolverine film. They basically backed off from that one because they didn't ask for much money, and Hugh Jackman took a pay cut, and so they didn't interfere as much, and the movie was incredibly successful.
And incredibly thoughtful.
Yeah. Did you get the chance to see Logan, Jordan?
Oh yeah, I saw it opening week.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Yeah, it was a damn good movie. I think it's comparable to Dark Knight, personally.
It was really good. It's a lot darker. It's a lot bleaker, I guess I would say. Logan's way bleaker because we're seeing almost the end of the story. I mean, the end of the story, I guess, in a way that, Dark Knight is the middle, which is always the gooey center, right? It's always the most fun, You
just wanted a chance to say gooey center.
You guys gave me the look. Gooey is hardly the worst thing we've said on this show, please. So then now, how do we feel about DC now? And I don't know if you saw Wonder Woman yet, Jordan, but I'm taking that out of this discussion because we're not talking about Wonder Woman until next week.
Well, I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself there. But yeah, sorry, Jordan, go ahead.
I haven't seen Wonder Woman, but I'm going to in the next few days.
Sweet.
Cool.
Only because I've heard so many good things about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't care.
Right.
Yeah, when it comes to DC, I grew up with Superman, Batman, Flash. I didn't really read any Wonder Woman, so I mean, if I hadn't heard that it was good, especially with the other movies that preceded it, I probably wouldn't have cared too much. Other than that, and I have a podcast, so we need to review it, which is coming up soon. But you ended up having that second wave of you had Spider-Man, some were good, some were bad. You had Fantastic Four, all were bad. The Hulk movie didn't do well. And it seemed like, okay, you got your good, you got your mostly bad, and then it got to the point where they made Iron Man. You're like, Iron Man?
That's
wow,
exactly what my reaction was when I first heard about it.
It seemed random,
Yeah,
didn't it?
really just go to the bottom of the well here, guys. And then it's like, holy crap. This is pretty good. This is interesting. Robert Downey Jr. is very good in the role. And
he is Tony Stark.
That, unfortunately.
They picked the only person that really could pull off that level of arrogance and genius and just, bravado at the same time.
Well, that unfortunately, I think, opened up the extended universe world where you get 8 to 10 of these movies a year, and I know they're not all from 4 of those are DC, 4 of those are Marvel, and then there's some others packaged in there. But I almost feel just completely numb to superhero movies now, where except for maybe Logan, I don't get really excited for them. I kind of look at them clinically, and it's just because there's no breather. It used to be, Batman's the only superhero movie, and then the next year it's Ninja Turtles and it's Dick Tracy, and it's just you had one and it was a big deal. But now there's 4 Marvel movies a year and 5 DC movies, and every month has a superhero movie, and it's just
and also you have TV shows that fill that gap too.
6 or 7 TV shows.
6 or 7 TV shows, which I love the TV shows. I'm not gonna knock them.
Jordan, do you feel it's
not only
too muddled?
I'm
sorry. Do you? Feel
not only are we. What?
Sorry, I ended up cutting you off there. Go ahead.
Not only are we getting bombarded with all these movies, but I don't feel like they have any stakes to them. Like, we know these characters aren't going to die; they're going to come back for a sequel. So I don't really feel connected to them, and there's just too much.
It's a very good point.
Yeah, because they're all just building to the next one and the next one, and I mean, they're superhero tentpoles. So to a degree, we know there's not too much to worry about. Maybe a really, really side character might die off, but you felt like you were gonna have a beginning, middle, and end to Spider-Man 2, which was a sequel. But it didn't have to fit into. It has to fit into Hulk and Fantastic Four and the next Avengers movie, and we got to have Doctor Strange is coming out soon. There's got to be something in the credits with Doctor Strange. It just was a movie. It had a beginning, middle, and end. Obviously, some things were left open, as it's a medium based on another medium that has continual to be continued, so to speak.
Right.
So obviously, some things are going to be.
It's almost like I think the biggest offender, in my opinion, is Avengers: Age of Ultron. That's the worst offender of the the commercial nature of the movies, where it's like, okay, Ultron, he's the big bad in the comic books, but he's kind of minor when you compare him to Thanos, and everything's Thanos this, and Thor disappears halfway through, and just stuff you're like, you almost had a checklist of things that you need to accomplish in the 3 hours that you've got, and all of it is pushing to the next movie.
Well, I think that's what broke Joss Whedon, wasn't it? Because he did have like a 25-piece checklist. Like, you have to do all these things because you got to piece these things from the other movies back in, and then you got to set up, phase 2.
He had to fight for that Hawkeye scene. The thing with the farm, he had to fight for that. They did not want to make him. They did not want to include that. They were like, nope, we don't really need that. So you had to fight for it.
One of the only really human scenes in the whole movie. Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah, like, along with all the movies that we're getting too many characters in each movie.
Yeah, I'm
like with Spider-Man 2, you just had Peter Parker dealing with, all this responsibility, and that's one big story arc. With the Avengers, you had like 10 characters all fighting for screen time.
And I'll be interested to see what they do with Infinity War, because that was one nice thing about having Joss Whedon, is if anybody can handle that load of that many characters at once, it's him. I think he did it very well in Avengers 2, maybe not as much, but we'll see if people get pushed to the side here with with that many.
I think they almost don't have a choice but to decide, almost tiers, like who's our first tier of heroes that we have to see for the 3 hours that you're watching it. What's the second tier of heroes that kind of make like maybe a couple minute appearance, and then what's the bottom third tier of heroes? Like I don't know any way that you could do it without segmenting them, like giving each hero almost their own little scene that they're in. Like I imagine that there's going to be a moment where they hop over to Doctor Strange's house in New York, and they talk to him for about a couple minutes. That, honestly, it doesn't really push anything. But it's just like, hey, we need to include him, because why not? Yeah.
It's part of me does like this too. The extended universe is interesting because each story has a cause and effect, not just in their own films, but in other films. But it just gets to the point where I don't think that I'm watching a movie. I'm watching a small piece in a much, much larger story, and I just feel that just takes me out of the movie a little bit. It kind of took me out of Civil War, where it just seemed like, okay, this is just filler till we get to, even though it was very good, but filler till we find out what's going on with Thor, and then that will help us set up, Infinity War, and then that'll lead to, Doctor Strange's reveal. It seems like I am just a cog in a machine, just to the next spoke. We're just going to keep going down the line here over and over, and never get any true satisfaction out of these films. And of course, I'll be in line for the next one as soon as it comes out.
That's always how it works. Yeah. So, Jordan, have you seen any of the DC movies? I know you mentioned you like Suicide Squad. What's your take on Batman v Superman?
Kind of messy.
Kind of messy, yeah.
Those are the only two I've seen, so I can't comment too much. But they were all right. I don't regret seeing them.
I went into it with such high hopes. I know John really was just like, "Yep, fuck it." But I as a fan of that series, and of that character, I wanted it to be good, but it just was not good. People kept telling me, "Oh, you got to see the extended version." And it's like, yeah, but then that's 30 minutes of more footage that doesn't really work, and it's all cutting room floor stuff, So I want it to be good, but I just felt that it kind of missed the mark.
Yeah. Well, what?
Do you guys feel that sometimes we just kind of keep coming back here to to our abuser? Because if you think about these franchises, do they not end up just diving into the ground only for we'll just restart it? Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Batman and all these movies, Spider-Man 3, where it's like, oh, this is horrible. What have they done? Like, it's like, oh, well, now they're not profitable anymore. Let's take a couple of years off and we'll just start it again. And then until we run that into the ground. And as much as we don't want to think about it, like, oh, they won't do that with Tony Stark. They won't do that with the Captain America movies. Yeah, they will. And then they'll just reboot those again, and they'll start the universes all over again. And when are we going to get to the point where even as big fans, we're like, okay, this is the 8th Spider-Man, and I just don't care anymore?
I'm getting to that point.
Seriously?
I did not like The Amazing Spider-Man at all. I didn't even see the second one until Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man came out in 2012, which is only 5 years after Spider-Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's way too soon. I didn't like it, and then now they have another one with Tom Holland.
It gets difficult too when you say that, you have to. These characters have very specific backstories, but when you've seen it, it gets harder and harder to see it again. But the filmmaker almost has an obligation to do it. Like any reinterpretation of Batman has to deal with his parents being killed, even though we've seen that 1,000 times now, but they still have to do it. And
they don't have to do it. They choose to do it.
What would you do if, like, how else would you
Let me
want
tell
to
you
know
something.
what Batman's
Okay,
cause
it's
was?
very simple. Okay, you've got an entire comic book series that doesn't always jump back to look at Batman's parents die, and like every version of the Batman films I've seen, they always jump back to his parents died. With Batman v Superman, they actually had bats make him fly, like little kid Bruce Wayne's flying in the hole. It's like, really. I just there's so many other pivotal moments with that character that they could pull to. I mean, Jesus Christ, you have Jason Todd gets murdered by the Joker. You're telling me we couldn't have that? I mean, that's a pretty pivotal moment. I mean, pull from that. It doesn't always have. I mean, I get it. You know, that moment, his parents dying in that alleyway. You know, that is what transformed Bruce Wayne into Batman. We know that. We know, everybody knows that. But, you know, you don't watch a Superman movie and they don't always jump back to, oh, let's look at Krypton blowing up again. You know, that's my problem, is that they're taking these characters and they're just on the surface, you know, an analysis of it. They just pick this singular moment because everyone's familiar with it, and then they jump into the rest of the story. But there's so many other nuanced areas of that character's history that they could easily pull from.
Well, do you feel that they actually took some time in between these, that the audience might not know why these characters are doing what they do, or how they became who they are? Like, let's say they honestly took 30 years before they make the next Spider-Man movie. Are we owed an origin story again? It's been an incredibly long time. The audience might not have any idea how Peter Parker became who he is, why he's doing what he does.
You're never going to see them wait 30 years
No.
for another superhero movie.
But I think I understand your point, though, John. Like, where's the responsibility to try to tell the full story, or where do they try to maybe do something new and assume that you know all the points that they keep hitting in every film over and over?
For example, with Batman v Superman, as an example, Zack Snyder's trying to make movies for the fans. So he is people that are hardened comic book readers, and kind of leaving other people out of that who just enjoyed, like, say, superhero movies that aren't comic book readers, or they only like, I only liked Ghost Rider. Nobody really just liked Ghost Rider. But anyways, there's a scene where Batman wakes up in a dream, inside a dream, and the Flash is like coming out of his computer and trying to warn him about things. A character that they have not introduced, a character that is hard to see and has no context in the film. And Zack Snyder would say, oh, it's a movie for the fans. And they know it's the Flash.
I didn't know that was the Flash.
I wasn't sure it was the
Me
Flash
neither.
either. I had to look it up. But
I don't know. I kind of would rather someone put things in, and if I don't understand, then I know it's not for me, and then I can look at it again, after the fact. I don't know. It seems like when these origin stories are beaten to death, I almost liked having something in Batman v Superman, and I didn't like much about that movie at all, but I liked that there was something in it that I didn't understand. I was like, wait, because I thought it was Robin, because they had like made such a big deal about his outfit being in the Batcave. Mm-hmm. Like, they obviously, the filmmakers wanted us to know was definitely Robin's outfit. And I was like, that's weird. I was like, is he having like fever dreams about Robin? So, I mean, I interpreted it my own way, and then, later realized I was wrong, but,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had the same thing happen in, like, the first Avengers. Even though there are people who say, oh, well, I knew that was Thanos, they didn't know. There's no way they could have known. I mean, most people went to Wikipedia immediately after and just, like, typed in, Avengers, and they looked at Wikipedia and said, oh, that's Thanos. But, I mean, for the most part, unless you're a diehard fan, you didn't know that. But that was just a small amount that they peppered in there. All I'm saying is that with a character like Batman, where you've got basically, what are we on now, 76, 77 years of comic book history?
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what you were asking.
So, yeah, something along those lines. Well over 75 years of comic book history. You don't have to keep always going back to his parents died in that alley. We all know that. Most people know that. You can pull from other life events in that character's timeline. I'd love to see them actually do, like, the Demon's Head the Heir to the Demon's Head saga with Ra's al Ghul and that whole thing. I'd love to see them do Long Halloween. I'd love to see them do all these other stories that are so pivotal to that character, but are so always ignored, or they're briefly referenced, or just used for development fodder, and not really explored to the full extent. The only one that I think even touches that is Batman Begins, where you can clearly, I could pull out year one and be like, yep, this is almost, a shot for shot.
But it's an origin story.
It's an origin story, but
that we already got, technically.
But here's the thing. That basically reboot the entire series. It's okay that had that origin story in there. There was enough time distance from that. I'm just saying that, for that series, that worked out fine. Okay, for Batman v Superman, you're going at Batman at a different time of his life. You don't need to have that already there. There was not much difference in time between Nolan's end of his film and the beginning of, Snyder's film. So, just saying, there's more.
So that was a lot of Batman.
That's a lot of Batman. I'm sorry.
Well, what are your thoughts, Jordan?
So, what are you suggesting that they do it like James Bond and just pluck him in the middle of the story?
Yeah,
I think that could work.
Would you think that works?
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah. And James Bond is
James Bond. Yeah, you get James Bond, you get one actor for 3 or 4 movies, and you move on to a new story. You don't need to reference the old ones. You don't even need to explain that it's a new Batman. He just is.
Right.
Well, are these movies almost like a drug? I mean, not to be melodramatic, but I saw Avengers before I saw Thor and Thor 2. I caught up after the fact, but those were 2 very important movies to see before you saw Avengers, because you're kind of like, who is Loki? What is this scepter? Why are they holding it? I mean, you can...
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah. So you were in the same ballpark.
I still haven't seen any of the Thor movies.
Yeah. They help.
they do.
Yeah. I mean, you can plug in and you can figure it out over time, but it's almost like, I need to see the next Marvel movie, or I won't understand, the one after that, and I got to see that one, or I won't understand.
They're cumulative.
They got a way of
way.
You need your fix, or else you get lost.
That's also how they tie into their episodic comic book history. If you just plopped in at a comic book store and just grabbed any random Avengers comic book, they'd be in the middle of a storyline.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the same sort of thing. I think that's what Marvel is trying to do. DC they're starting at we're gonna do start at Batman v Superman and jump into Justice League with basically starting at ground zero, so they don't really have that whole tied in stuff yet.
Well, they're a bit of a mess because Batman's been around for like 20 years, but Superman's new, and it's Wonder Woman's technically been around for a long time, but been hidden. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
Look, Wayne and Martha, or was it Thomas and Martha? Wayne died, and we have to be continually reminded. All right, Dr. Wayne is dead. They have to tell us every time, guys.
Not in Flashpoint.
Ooh.
Brian,
tricky bastard.
You just nerded all over the place.
9th level neckbeard right there.
That's right, I did.
Yeah. Do you guys think that we the audience, to kind of wrap up here, do you think we're going to get, what's going to happen first? Are we going to get fatigue as an audience and stop going, or are these films just going to peter themselves out in quality? Like, what's going to happen first? And then how long before it just all starts up again? Or will it ever stop?
I mean, Jordan, do you want to go first? What's your opinion on that?
I think they're going to teeter off first, because no studio is going to stop making them as long as they're making money. They get fired in a second.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I personally think that they're going to have their Batman and Robin moment. That's what's going to happen. They're going to extend themselves out in
DC and Marvel both? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're going to extend themselves out to the point where they're going to think this is what the audience wants, and they're going to try to play to that, and then eventually that's going to lead to playing it safe, because they're going to do something that's way too dark or way too extreme or way too something, and they'll try to balance that back out by doing the exact opposite to sell toys, because as we've talked about, That's what a lot of these superhero movies are. They're to sell toys. They're to sell comic books. They're to sell merchandise. And that's always been the driving force. So I think they'll have their Batman v Superman, not the Batman v Superman, but their Batman and Robin moment. And that will pretty much end it for a good decade.
See,
I think they're going to get better, guys.
just trying to
But
be
no,
bold.
I mean, I feel like we've been in this era of comic book movies for so long. I feel like something is going to have to change. Now, we'll talk about Wonder Woman in all of her glory next week. But I think it's worth noting in this episode that, Wonder Woman was directed by a woman.
Yeah.
And we have a different film. And I think that moving in that direction, maybe finding more diversity in the director and finding more diversity in the story. I mean, that is my hope for the future of comic book movies, is that they become more inclusive. The storylines change a little bit in tone. We'll talk more about that next week because, Wonder Woman, I think, is different from the other DC movies. But I think that things have been this way for long enough that things are getting muddled. And I think once this generation, quote unquote, of actors, once Chris Evans' 18 movie contract is up, then
I don't think he's making it past Infinity War.
he only signed up for 9.
That's what I'm saying. I think he might.
Yeah, I think that's it. But I think that we may see a new dawn on that horizon, and something
By the way,
will change.
that's how you know who's going to die. That's the contract's up.
No,
They're
don't
dead.
say that.
It's really interesting to think that they didn't even procure Michael Keaton for Batman Returns. They had to go and just say, "Hey, are you coming back?" And now you mentioned Chris Evans, 9 movie
And they talked,
deal
or he talked them down
from a 12 picture deal.
Yeah, they wanted to sign him for 12 pictures, and he was like, "No, I'll do 9."
Yeah.
But what really makes me nervous is that they're doing Suicide Squad 2, even though it didn't
What?
make all.
What?
Yeah.
What was that?
Suicide Squad
No.
2, 2018.
Oh God.
They're filmed 2018. Might be
Academy Award winning.
2019.
No, we do
Suicide
not have to
Squad.
mention that.
But it makes you so mad. It's so fun.
But what worries me is that movie, nobody really liked it. Critics didn't like it. The
Didn't make that
public
much
didn't
money.
like it. It made enough money, but it was just a train wreck that nobody really seemed to care for. But you know what? It's sequel time because this one will be better. And as long as these movies have comic book characters in them, they will make money. So I just feel like, not that I want this to end. I don't want to sound cynical. I love Spider-Man. I love Xmen. I love Batman. But it just seems like this train will just never stop. And I want it not to stop. I want it to slow down and be a little more thoughtful. But I know that this is about making all the money in all the world. And I know that that's what this is really about. But I would like them to actually put a lot of thought and consideration in these, which they don't because they just are there to pump 30 of them out a year and to make as much money as possible.
Well, don't forget, I mean, especially specifically in the case of something like Suicide Squad 2, every studio purposely makes a film that they know is going to tank.
That's not it, though.
It's their tax situation. They can write it off for the taxes. They get a huge break on their taxes if a movie just is a total flop. If it makes negative money.
Yeah, but that'll...
So,
I'm sorry.
I'm talking. I'm just kidding. But if you think about it, if they go for something like Suicide Squad 2, they can't lose. They'll make it. If it does terribly, they'll recoup the loss. But if for some reason everyone comes to see the circus sideshow, then it made money. So I feel like in that case in particular, they're rolling the dice. But
I think Paul Blart Mall Cop 3 is the movie that they are assured will fail. I think they're hoping Suicide Squad will make $1 billion. And
but
actually,
if it doesn't, they won't care.
But,
Oh God.
all right. Well, yeah, I don't see the train slowing down anytime soon. But
Any final thoughts from you, Jordan?
Yeah, one more. They're going to make so many movies. They're going to have so many characters and so many story arcs that it can only be for the fans. They're the only ones that are going to be able to keep up with it all.
Totally.
The average moviegoer won't be able to understand.
Yeah.
Totally.
Very good point.
Totally.
Very good point. Well, thank you, Jordan, for being on the show. It's been a great pleasure to get your perspective. And I hope that, being on here, talking with us, maybe it gives you another chance to take a look at some of our other episodes,
No pressure.
No pressure.
Brian,
No
there's no
pressure.
pressure.
No,
If he wants
and
to
hey.
stop listening to the show, he
guys,
can.
and if you listen to them, you don't like those either,
Tell us about it.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll
there
have
you
him
go.
on again, guys. Come on. We'll leave this poor man alone. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Jordan. Is there anywhere on social media that you'd like people to follow you?
No.
Totally valid. All right.
Fair enough.
I have social media, but
Hey.
it'd be kind of weird if.
Totally.
Sorry, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I'm at All Hail Jordan.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool. You can find me on Twitter at LA_Croft.
The Unreal J Wolves.
You can find me at Brian Kyneton. I also run the Psycho Show Twitter. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or question you want to throw our way, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. And make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. Send us a rate, send us a review. Be like Jordan. Tell us how we're doing. And we'll respond to you. You know, we try to be that type of podcast. So give us a rating, give us a review, and catch our new episode available every Sunday.
Will our show survive? Will our heroes be here next week? Tune in next week. Cinema Psycho fans, same Cinema Psycho channel, same Cinema Psycho's time.
Epicast.